There's a quote I like. It goes something like this. All it takes is one bad day to reduce the sanest man alive to lunacy. That's how far the world is from where I am. Just one bad day. That's Alan Moore, Batman, The Killing Joke. Now, you're just one click away. One click away from your data being stolen. There is a malware that is using the .url file extension, and when you click it, it bypasses a lot of the security things that Microsoft has set up. And that's it. Your crypto, your data gets stolen. Just one click. You're one click away. Let's dive into it. Today, we're facing an unprecedented array of data breaches, hacking attempts, and surges in digital crime. Why is there such a widespread amount, and how little is noticed in our everyday lives? Malware, dark sites, brute forcing, zero-day script kiddies, and nation-state hackers are all on the rise. Learn more about the threats we face and gain a bit more knowledge than yesterday. Hey everyone, another episode of Exploit Brokers is coming to you now. So, in an article by the Hacker News, hackers weaponize Windows flaw to deploy crypto-siphoning Phemedrone Stealer. Threat actors have been observed leveraging a now-patched security flaw in Microsoft Windows to deploy an open-source information stealer called Phemedrone Stealer. Phemedrone targets web browsers and data from cryptocurrency wallets and messaging apps, such as Telegram, Steam, and Discord, Trend Micro researchers have been mentioning. So, what's going on? You have a new malware, or a malware that was found, that's exploiting a vulnerability, and it was patched, and I'll get to that. But they're using that and some social engineering to get the user to click something, and then they drop a open source, which means you can find it on GitHub, an open source stealer that takes as much information as it can get its hands on. Let's keep going on. It also takes screenshots and gathers system information regarding hardware, location, and operating system details. The stolen data is then sent to attackers via Telegram or their command and control (CNC) server. The attack leverages CVE 2023-36025. So that's CVE-2023-36025. Now, some of you may not know what that number means, but it's a identifier given to a vulnerability. In this case, it's and I quote, a security bypass vulnerability in Windows Smart Screen that could be exploited by tricking a user into clicking on a specially crafted internet shortcut, .url, or a hyperlink pointing to an internet shortcut file. If any of you have ever had a shortcut file on your desktop, so you click it and it opens up, whether that's a company specific web page or something that's preloaded, or maybe some applications use shortcut to open up an executable and pass in parameters. There's multiple legit uses for a shortcut, but in this case there's a shortcut file and they're using a known vulnerability that is a 8.8, and that's 8.8 out of 10, so it's pretty high up there. And that vulnerability essentially gets Microsoft to ignore scanning it or pushing it through something known as Smart Screen. And when you click it, it'll start doing stuff that you don't want it to. The actively exploited shortcoming was addressed by Microsoft as part of its November 2023 Patch Tuesday updates. So, Patch Tuesday is essentially when patches and stuff like that are sent out from vendors, Microsoft and things like that mainly. And it's just a time frame for patches or for updates to vulnerable software and things like that to come out, right? It's got to come out at some point, and Patch Tuesday is just kind of the way things have been rolling out lately. The infection process involves a threat actor hosting malicious internet shortcut files on Discord or cloud services like filetransfer.io, with the links also masked using URL shorteners such as short URL. They're finding ways to get users to click the malicious link, whether it's Discord or, latest mp3.url. So, you want to download something, or people who tend to go online to try to find their favorite music go on there and you click it, and that's it. You're one click away. The execution of the booby-trapped .url file allows it to connect to an actor-controlled server and execute a control panel .cpl file in a manner that circumvents Window Defender Smart Screen by taking advantage of the CVE we mentioned. Smart Screen is that. It is a way for Microsoft to try to screen and prevent you from clicking on malicious things or going to malicious websites. There is a really cool graphic, and I'm just going to kind of go through that graphic. So the initial infection happens when you click that malicious.url. That then exploits, there's a file that's clicked, and that exploits the CVE. That then brings down a control panel file, a .dll, and that control panel allows other DLLs to run. And those then reach out to the command and control server on GitHub to download a loader. That loader then executes stuff to create persistence, and other things are installed, all the bad stuff. So the way they have it written, when the malicious.cpl file is executed through the Windows control panel process binary, it in turn calls rundll32.exe to execute the DLL, the researcher said. This malicious DLL acts as a loader that then calls on Windows PowerShell to download and execute the next stage of the attack hosted on GitHub. Let's break that down a little bit. Whenever you run a process or whenever you run something, there's DLLs, which are dynamically linked libraries. It's a way for dependencies to get loaded in on Windows. That's an oversimplification. And the malicious DLL, which is the bad guy's DLL that's getting loaded in as part of that malicious CPL file, is acting as a loader. A loader is any piece of malicious software, any piece of software that its entire purpose is to load in something else, right? So think of a loading screen in a video game. Whenever you have a loading screen, the game is trying to load the next level. Well, here a malicious loader is trying to load in the next stage in the attack, or load in a persistence module, or load in another piece of the malware, or even the main attack vector. And it's just that, it's loading something in, thus the name loader. And when it's calling Windows PowerShell is, for any power users out there, they may be familiar with it, but PowerShell is akin to like a terminal on Linux or Mac. Windows PowerShell, it's gotten upgrades over the years, but a Windows PowerShell gives you command line access to a lot of the underlying Windows tools. So think of it as a Windows CLI, if you will. There's also the command prompt, but PowerShell's kind of they're updated, and there's a lot of cool features that the command prompt doesn't necessarily have. And it downloads, and then it executes the next stage of attack. A PowerShell is a full-fledged terminal of sorts for Windows. So you can run commands, you can run PowerShell scripts and stuff like that. There's entire language to PowerShell. The follow-on payload is a PowerShell loader, data3.txt, that acts as a launchpad for Donut, an open-source shellcode loader that decrypts and executes Phemedrone Stealer. Written in C#, Phemedrone Stealer is actively maintained by its developers on GitHub and Telegram, facilitating the theft of sensitive information from compromised systems. So I did actually pull up the Phemedrone, and Phemedrone Stealer is on GitHub. You can find it. And when you go to it, they call themselves the best open source stealer. And they say it's for educational purposes only. Maybe they mean that. The authors genuinely mean that. And they're just being hijacked for other stuff. There's a lot of code you can find on GitHub. Some good, some bad, some useful, some educational. It's just a repository of code, right? And some of the features that they're listing is Stealer gathers all data in memory. No external libraries are used for Phemedrone Stealer. It works both on x32 and x64 systems. It is configurable anti-CIS, anti-virtual machine, anti-debugger, and mutex. It grabs cookies, passwords, autofills, and credit cards from Chromium-based browsers, grabbing cookies, passwords, and autofills from Gecko-based browsers, grabbing Telegram, Steam, and Discord sessions using dynamically path searching, grabbing sensitive extensions from Chromium-based browsers, and grabbing most known crypto wallets. This is a very well, from what it seems, very well written piece of software that is meant to steal stuff. Thus the name, Phemedrone Stealer. The stealer, at least. So going back, that's the ultimate payload. These bad guys are taking advantage of a CVE that was patched, but most things, even though they're patched in November, we're in, what, January 2024, the recording of this video. I guarantee you there's going to be thousands upon thousands upon thousands of machines that don't have that, and probably won't. Sometimes forever, sometimes just months later. It's very important for you guys to be patching your systems, update your phone, update your computer, update your machines, update everything you can. It's generally a good thing to update. I'm not going to say 100%, but it is generally a good thing to update. There have been instances that memory recalls where updating actually made you more vulnerable than staying on a previous version, but those are kind of the exception, not the norm. Generally speaking, an update will make you more secure, but you always risk that, the update was rushed out and it could break stuff. You got to weigh the benefits. But to kind of re-summarize everything, there is an attack that takes advantage of a .url extension file, and that .url bypasses the Windows Defender smart screen, which attempts to try to keep you safe by looking at websites and applications and trying to see if it's been malicious or it's been known to be malicious. Using the .url and the CVE, the vulnerability that exists, it bypasses all that, which then allows it to run the malicious stuff that it wants. That downloads a malicious DLL or CPL file, and that CPL file then loads a DLL, which then loads pretty much a launcher or a loader for the actual shellcode that then decrypts and executes the Phemedrone Stealer. And the Phemedrone Stealer is the open source component that you can find on GitHub that you can actually go look at the code for if you're interested. And all that then steals your crypto, your website information, your browser information. It steals everything that it can. And that's kind of where we're at. The best way is to have patched from November 2023 forward. So if you haven't patched, now's a good time to patch, right? There is a lot of these stealers, whether it's the open source version that we're seeing, whether it's custom homebrewed stuff that we're seeing. At the end of the day, criminal hackers, not hackers, because there's white hats, but criminal hackers and cyber criminals want either to steal your data to sell, to steal your data to steal from you more than just the data, right? If they're stealing crypto wallets, they can steal your crypto. If they're stealing your web data or your web browser data, they can try to steal passwords, log into your bank account, drain it, right? There's a lot of things that can be done with that. They could even sell it off to scammers and other people. There is a lot of ways to make money, right? Data is gold. And we're seeing more criminals take advantage of just stealers. It's kind of one of the oldest things that I can think of, right? Viruses have always stolen information, or viruses have always tried to do that. Now people just have more stuff on their devices with the creation of cryptocurrency wallets in the past decade or so, a little bit more. But with that, you're seeing people carrying literal money on their computer and digital assets, NFTs, cryptocurrency, altcoins, whatever. And then you also have people who log into a bunch of stuff on their computer, and maybe they reuse the same password. So they steal, a bunch of the passwords. They notice a bunch of the passwords are the same, and now you can do a credential stuffing attack. You can pivot. The more information you have, the more damage you can do as a cyber criminal. And this is just one other way of obtaining it. There's, RCEs and hacking websites. This one's just careful what you click. Don't click URLs you don't know. Don't click anything that looks malicious. I know that's very generic information, but don't click on anything. And if you see a .url, definitely don't click that. And if you're online, just be very careful what you're clicking. I know that's very generic advice, but it's kind of the best that I can say at this point, right? The fact that the CVE bypassed the Windows Defender, the smart screen, they're getting smarter. So this would be one of the harder things. You have a lot of phishing and URL clicks that just take you to a website telling you, hey, your bank needs you to log in, or you need to install this. This one would bypass a lot of that. So it is a smarter version of a lot of the common click attacks that require a user to click it. But I mean, outside of turning everything off and locking yourself in a cave, just be careful. If you see a .url extension, do not click it. That's kind of the best advice I can give you taken away from this. Guys, please, if you can subscribe, like, comment. If you're listening to other podcasts, please follow and give a rating. But guys, this has been Laudo with another episode of Exploit Brokers. I will see you in the next one.